Now, an investigation by Channel 4 News has uncovered serious concerns among serving officers at Greater Manchester Police. They've told this programme they're taking unacceptable risks and that dozens of inappropriate and disproportionate arrests are being made every week. It comes amid the current Chief Constable's drive to double arrest figures, which has been one of the key factors in getting the force out of special measures. Data from the force itself shows that in the 12 months to January, arrests were up on the previous year from 36,797 to 56,088, a 52% increase. And the number of charges went up over the same period from 14,310 to 18,578, an increase of 30%. But while the numbers may look convincing, we've heard from serving and former officers, as well as those in the wider justice system, who describe a system in chaos. In a moment, we'll be hearing from an Assistant Chief Constable from the police force itself. But first, our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon has this exclusive report.
A failing police force 2 years ago. Now, with more arrests, more crimes solved. The focus on back-to-basics policing has seen the fast-track transformation of GMP from special measures to most improved.
I'm not apologetic for the idea that we, the police, are the only people who get to arrest bad people. If we're not doing that, we're not doing our jobs.
But serving police officers, speaking anonymously, have told Channel 4 News all is not as it seems. They claim a promise to double arrests is having intolerable consequences.
Arrests send out a good signal to criminals and the public, but the pendulum has swung way too far in that direction, and now there are dozens of inappropriate and disproportionate arrests every week.
We are being asked to fudge figures, stick crimes in for absolutely everything.
We go home every day knowing that we've done a substandard job through no fault of our own, and have taken unacceptable risks in the workplace, which will, at some point, lead to someone dying in custody.
With arrests up by almost 20,000 in 1 year, an increase of more than 50%, the accounts we've heard from serving GMP officers are echoed in a critical report from His Majesty's Inspectorate. It said legal requirements aren't always met, with staff stretched, safety and dignity compromised, people have been left naked in cells. And the report said problems previously raised by inspectors hadn't been fixed, with some things made worse with the rapid rise in arrests.
The report describes the treatment of women and children as a lack of dignity. For me, I find the whole process perverse.
Zayna spent around 40 hours in a police cell when she was arrested in 2021. It was during lockdown and a few weeks before GMP's new Chief Constable was named. She told me a friend had been worried about her and called 999 asking for a welfare check to be done.
I was expecting an ambulance. I saw flashing blue lights and I thought, OK, they're here.
Open the door, do it now.
They were banging on the door, shouting through the letterbox. Zayna, open up, it's the police.
With Zayna refusing to let them in, around an hour after they first arrived, police drilled through her door. She's used data protection laws to get body cam and custody footage.
One's lifted me up, placed me in the kitchen. They've asked me, what have you taken? Because it was clear that I was under the influence of something.
Have you taken anything?
My reaction was just to swipe the woman's glasses off her face.
What do you mean?
But it wasn't done in a way where I was wanting to attack her.
Right, you're under arrest for assault. You don't have to say anything, but we have to defend you, not mention when questions something.
Zayna appears to be unconscious when she's carried into a police cell. She's still handcuffed when her clothes are removed, including her underwear, which is cut off. Custody issue shorts are put on and a metal detector is used.
The next memory that I've got is waking up. I've looked down and I've got no top on.
How would you describe the way that you were treated during that long period?
Even when I was, even right from the start, when I was strip searched and left semi-naked, I wasn't even given a blanket. The blanket was given to me about an hour and a half later. The officers that were coming to do the welfare checks periodically found my distress amusing.
Were they laughing? Zayna wasn't charged with any offence, and she's since made a number of complaints about her detention. We can't verify her claim about officers laughing, as there's no audio on the custody footage disclosed to her by police. It is, though, standard for audio to be recorded. We asked GMP why there's no mention of a strip search in the detention log. The police force said Zayna's clothes were removed for welfare reasons, and it didn't constitute a strip search.
We all look forward to warmly welcoming you to the Greater Manchester family.
When Stephen Watson was hired, GMP had been stuck in a state of omni-crisis. The last Chief Constable was sacked by Andy Burnham.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
The new chief came with a rapid turnaround reputation and tough on-crime promises that attracted attention.
Home Secretary.
And an influential fan.
Stephen is a great leader in policing. He rejects woke policing. Under the powerful leadership of the Chief Constable, Sir Stephen Watson, that force has turned around.
Late last year, GMP came out of special measures and was praised for significant improvements. But at the same time, another inspection had just been done, looking at standards in custody, and it found some serious concerns. But we've been told that shouldn't have been a surprise to those at the top of GMP. One of our sources has told us he personally raised issues with senior leaders, but things continued to get worse. It was in the same period when Kathy was arrested.
It was traumatising and stressful, and you don't get treated like a human being. In fact, a dog probably gets treated better than what people in GMP police custody does. When they know you've got problems, they demoralise you to make you feel like it's your fault, and you're the one in the wrong. And if they can put me down as someone who's got problems and she's kicked off, no one's going to believe me. No one's going to listen to me.
Kathy, which isn't her real name, had previously contacted GMP with suspicions a member of her family was a victim of crime. Soon after, police started investigating her. She's not been charged, but is on bail, so we can't go into all the details. Late last year, she says she was asked to go to a police station to be interviewed, but once there, she says she was arrested, held for several hours, and strip searched. What needs to change?
They need to follow their own procedures. They need to treat people like human beings. They need to give people who are on medication their medication. They need to not strip search people for absolutely no reason.
Kathy is being helped by the Maggie Oliver Foundation, run by a former GMP detective. The charity says it's raising the case with senior figures in the force. It's understood GMP found no evidence of misconduct when investigating Kathy's complaint, though she's requested a review. GMP has claimed when clothes are removed for welfare reasons, it's not a strip search.
Charges are up 42%. Can the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, keep pace? And what about the cells?
So we are putting a really, what I describe as beneficial pressure on the system.
What's it like in the courts at the moment?
It's chaos. The court system, it is completely overwhelmed.
Katrina McLaughlin is a duty defence solicitor in Manchester. From her perspective, the pressure on the justice system is far from beneficial.
We've seen arrests go through the roof, and they're then going to the court systems that cannot cope. They just simply cannot cope with that volume.
And the number of arrests isn't her only concern.
The very young age at which child suspects are being taken into custody and not differentiated treated no differently from adult suspects. They have the safeguards there, they're just not being put into practice.
We're heading to court for the sentencing of one of Katrina's clients, an autistic 14-year-old. When arrested, she was held in custody for at least 8 hours. Her police interview was in the early hours of the morning, which her solicitor says should not be happening. Greater Manchester Police disagree, saying there is relevant context, and in some circumstances, interviewing a child in the early hours is proportionate. When we got to court, though, there were more problems.
We went to court, they didn't have it on the list, went to reception to find it, they couldn't find it anywhere, went back into court and they found out that it was on a different system and that's why no one could find it. And after the case was found, the hearing couldn't go ahead because the report wasn't ready, and it's been adjourned until May, the end of May.
And clearly all those things are not the fault of GMP, but we do have a police force sending more and more people into that system at the moment.
Yes, and the youth courts, as with adult court, are the busiest that I've ever seen them.
GMP say by making more arrests, they're keeping more people safe and winning back trust. Some inside the police force insist the reality is not that simple.
Well, Claire is with me tonight. Claire, what has been the reaction to those concerns that were raised in your report?
Well, in Greater Manchester, it's Andy Burnham's office that has oversight for policing. They've told us that they are taking the concerns raised in our report very seriously. And the Deputy Mayor, Kate Green, has said that while GMP's focus is rightly on tackling crime, it must be done alongside treating detainees decently and fairly. On those wider problems within the justice system that we heard about, the MOJ has said it's investing hundreds of millions of pounds into reducing the backlogs. As for Greater Manchester Police, well, they say they've put extra staff into custody with more being trained up. They have taken issue about strip searching. They say the 2 women who we spoke to, as far as they're concerned, they don't consider what happened to be a strip search. So that was one of the issues that I talked to the Assistant Chief Constable about earlier, newly having joined the force with oversight over custody. Talked to him about what exactly constitutes a strip search. But he started out by telling me about the progress he believes the police force is making.
We are enjoying an increase in arrests at the minute across Manchester. So we are arresting around 59,000 people a year. That's about 50% more than we were doing last year.
Serving officers that we've spoken to are not enjoying the increase in arrests because they say it's putting intolerable pressure on them in custody.
I think the first thing I need to say in relation to that is that I thank the staff. The figures I've quoted, a 50% increase in detainees, of course is placing a positive pressure in that custody facility. They're working really hard.
A positive pressure?
Yes, a positive pressure. Because what we are doing, we are increasing the arrest rate, we are locking up people for whom we suspect offences. Our outcome rate, i.e. the crimes that we solve, is increasing. So it's not about arresting more people, but the amount of crimes that we detect are reducing. It's rising as well. So the question around staffing, I do understand that pressure is placed on staff, and I thank them for the hard work. It's right to say that there's been that increase, and that's putting pressure internally on the system, and indeed even some pressures out over in terms of partners, but we've got a plan for how we're going to deal with that.
You say that you now have a plan to deal with this increased pressure in custody. But the reality is that this promise to make more arrests, to double the number of arrests, was made, what, 18 months ago? Shouldn't it have been entirely foreseeable at that point in time that if you were telling officers to go out and arrest more people, to double the number of arrests, you were going to need more staff and more cells in custody?
Well, I think you're right in that we needed more staff. So the figures that I have off the top of my head is that we have around 2,000 more staff than we did have around 3 or 4 years ago.
In custody?
Police officers. So we've increased that capability and capacity as part of that uplift. As a consequence of that, that involves lots of training, lots of infrastructure, lots of vehicles and others. And that all can't happen overnight. So we did make some initial investment into criminal justice units in their entirety. But what we recognise that this is the next piece of that jigsaw that we need to give that capability and capacity that you so rightly identify. The central tenet of your question is right. It might need more capability and capacity. That's the journey that we're on.
We've spoken to a couple of women who were arrested by Greater Manchester Police, who were taken into custody and who've given us accounts of being strip searched by Greater Manchester Police, and they believe it wasn't appropriate and that it was degrading and traumatising. What would you say about that?
Well, I think the first thing I need to make clear, Claire, is I think these are ongoing investigations and complaints, so it wouldn't be appropriate to me to speak of the specific detail of those two cases. But if your general tenet is around people coming into custody being strip searched, then that does happen occasionally. It doesn't happen on every occasion. Strip searches tend to happen when we believe somebody's concealed something on them, which they could use to harm themselves or be evidence of an offence. And they occasionally do happen. When they do happen, there's clear guidance in terms of how that should take place.
OK, but if we talk in general terms, you don't consider that to be a strip search if it's for welfare reasons, if it's to prevent self-harm?
It's a really broad question, and it'd have to depend on the circumstances. You know, it would be unusual for all the clothing to be recovered off one person. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that comes down to the individual circumstances, what we know in terms of the background.
But the HMIC's position that welfare clothes removal should be considered a strip search and should come with the same rules and safeguards, that is something you accept?
Yeah.
And do custody staff know, and have they been told, that they should be recording those welfare clothes removals as strip searches?
The custody staff receive training every couple of months, continuous professional development, all the new pieces of legislation, that training is given out all the time.